The first one is the kind of sentence which maybe should not be used. On the right side, the sentence which should be used, right? Starting from the first one, instead of using a sentence like Tuesday is the only day we can promise a quick response to purchase order requests. We are swamped the rest of the week. Now this is a sentence. It is grammatically correct. There is no problem with it. But it would have been better to write things like, if you need a quick response, please submit your order requests on Thursday. Now basically both the sentences, they are actually conveying the same thing, but their tone and their feel of these sentences is very different. In the first sentence, what are you actually seeing is that the writer is totally focused on himself, right? The writer is totally focused on himself. He is considering his routine. He is considering his ability to deliver a certain order. But in the next sentence, you can see the meaning is the same, right? But the attitude or the feel of that statement is very different, and it is very much audience oriented, right? If you need a quick response, please submit your order requests on Thursday. Now this is something which is very much audience oriented. The first one was not the audience oriented, it was the sender oriented. Another example we have that we offer MP3 players with 20, 50 and 100 GB, 100 gigabyte storage, right? An alternative, a preferred alternative would be you can choose MP3 player with 20, 50, 100 gigabyte storage. Now again, meaning of both these sentences is the same, but the feel to it, the nature of them is different. The second one is consumer oriented, audience oriented, and the first one was actually the sender oriented, right? So what we need to have things which are audience oriented, and that's why we need the you attitude. But again, it may not be applicable. This formula, this concept may not be applicable all the time. In some cases, things are different. For example, if you are maybe you are in a workplace and you are trying to point out some mistakes or maybe some failures of our subordinates. So in that case, the you attitude might not be the best way to go, right? For example, in the first case, which is the you attitude, in fact, is you failed to deliver customers' orders in time. Or another sentence, you must correct all 5 copies by noon. Now both of them, they are having the you attitude. But in this case, it may be a little rude, it may be a little demotivating, it may not be nice, right? So in this case, we must try to avoid the you attitude, and alternatively, we can use sentences like, instead of you failed to deliver the customer's orders in time, we can use sentence like, the customer did not receive the order in time. Now, the same meaning is actually being delivered, but the responsible person is not being targeted very strongly, right? In another case, the second sentence, you must correct all 5 copies by noon. The alternative which we have is that all 5 copies must be corrected by noon. Now, in this case, same meaning is delivered, but it is a little toned down. It is not directly trying to criticize someone, right? So in some cases, in cases like that, the you attitude may not be the best way to go, but in all cases, when you are actually trying to communicate something to the audience, to the customers of your business, or maybe any potential prospects, you attitude would be the way to go, right? The next thing is maintaining standards or etiquettes. Now we have talked a lot about standards and etiquettes in our previous lectures, and we know that they are very important whenever we are in a social gathering, right? So again, etiquettes and standards, it must be considered while we are writing something. For example, we will try to clear it up with the sentences with these examples in the table. The first one, once again, you have managed to bring down the entire website through your incompetent programming. Now this is a sentence, it is correct grammatically, no problem with it, but it just does not sound very nice, right? We may not be able to see we are not seeing much of the etiquette in this sentence, right? Because whoever hears this sentence will not feel good. So alternatively, what is preferred, we must write things like, let's review the last website update to explore ways to improve the process. Now, same meaning is actually being implied in both these sentences, but the sentence on the left is very much rude, very much critical, but the sentence on right, it is a bit mellow on the nature, right? In the first sentence, we are actually directly targeting someone, criticizing someone very harshly, but in the next sentence, the same is being done, but in a nicer way, in a better way. Another example, you have been sitting on our order for 2 weeks and we need it now. Now this is also something maybe a bit too forward, maybe a bit too harsh. Alternatively, what we can say is that our production schedules depend on timely delivery of parts and supplies, but we have not yet received the order you promised to deliver 2 weeks ago. Please respond today with a firm delivery commitment. Now this is something which is a little nice, which is not very harsh, and we are not directly trying to criticize someone. So these things are known as etiquettes. There is a lot more to etiquettes, but this was just for an example. So we must be considerate of etiquettes whenever we are actually trying to write a message. Now the third thing is emphasize the positive. Now this is very important. Instead of always being inclined towards the negative side, we should emphasize on the positive aspects. For example, first sentence, it is impossible to repair your laptop today. Now this is totally going towards negativity, right? Because the laptop it cannot be repaired today, period, right? Now this sentence is very much negative. Alternatively, what we can write is, your computer can be ready by Tuesday. Would you like a loaner until then? Sorry, there is a sentence mistake. It's not line, spelling mistake. It's not line, it's like. So in the second sentence, your computer can be ready by Tuesday. Would you like a loaner until then? Would you like to have another laptop so that you can keep your things going till then? So the difference between these two sentences is that the first one is very much inclined towards negativity, while the second one is emphasizing on the positive things. So in order to keep things good, nice and positive, we should use such sentences. Another example, we wasted 300,000 rupees advertising in that magazine. Alternatively, we can say our 300,000 rupees invested did not pay us off. Let's analyze the experience and apply the insights to future campaigns, right? Same thing is being implied here, but sentences are different. One is inclined towards negativity, while the other one is emphasizing on the positive. Another sentence, the problem with this department is its failure to control costs, right? Now this is again all going towards the negative. How can we actually emphasize on the positive in this situation is that the performance of this department can be improved by tightening cost controls, right? So now as we can see this sentence is emphasizing on the positive side of the story, right? So whenever you're trying to write, use as much as possible to be focusing on the positive side. Yes, definitely all these points we are discussing, it may not be possible 100% of the times to be following these points exactly, but whenever possible, to what extent possible, we should try to make it happen. Another thing is using bias-free language. Bias-free language, it avoids words and phrases that unfairly and even unethically categorize or maybe stigmatize people in ways related to their gender, race, ethnicity, disability, or any other personal characteristic, right? We have gender biases. We should avoid using sentences which are genderly biased, right? The best thing is not to mention gender at all, right? But if you need to, then we should be using words to represent both the genders, right? We should not be avoiding any gender. Another thing, whenever we are writing, we should not be focusing on someone based on the gender, right, in our writing. So we should be all neutral. Race and racial and ethnic bias. Now, this is also very important to consider. We should avoid identifying people by race or ethnic origin. Unless certain label is relevant to the matter, then it's all right. But in usual cases, in places where it is not necessary, we should not be labeling people or doing things like that. We have another one, age bias. Mentioning the age of someone unnecessarily, it should not be done. Disability bias, physical, mental, sensory, or any emotional impairments, they should never be mentioned in business messages unless it is something very much relevant. But in usual cases, things should not be used. Now, apart from these things, whenever we are in university nowadays, I'll talk about my own university, your university. We often say things like the weaker students, right? Maybe people who were not from a very strong background, people who could not get as good education priorly as the other students, people who might be able to speak English very fluently, and people who cannot speak English fluently, Afghan students, Pashto speaking students, Balochi students, maybe students from Uganda and Somalia, right? These type of things, these type of words, these type of statements, they are all biased, right? So we should not be using these distinctions. We should not be emphasizing on these differences until and unless it is very much important, right? So whenever you are writing, you must always, the language that you use, it must be bias free, right? Next thing, building strong relationships, that is also very important. Establishing your credibility is very important. Audience responses to your messages, they depend heavily on your credibility. A measure of your believability based on how reliable you are and how much trustworthy you are. These type of things, they are all related to credibility, and these are very important. Now, how to establish this credibility? Very simple, with honesty, with objectivity. Objectivity shows that you can distance yourself from emotional situations, right? You must be thinking objectively. Whatever your personal thoughts, whatever your emotions, whatever your personal relationship with a certain person are, they should not be affecting while you are working, whenever you are actually trying to write something that is going to represent you long way, right? So objectivity, awareness to audience needs, again very important. Your credentials, your knowledge, and your expertise, these three things will also add up to your credibility. Endorsements. An endorsement is a statement on your behalf by someone who is accepted by the audience as an expert, right? For example, Roger Federer trying to advertise or trying to endorse Nike shoes. Now, this is something known as endorsements. Roger Federer being one of the great athletes, when he is trying to endorse Nike, so definitely people would try to believe that, would start to believe that Nike is a good brand for athletics. So endorsements and performance, definitely performance is how you actually prove your credibility. These type of things, these are important in order to build a good relationship. Sincerity, it is also something very important. So these things must be kept in mind in order to make a good relationship with your customers or audience. Another thing, projecting your company's image. It should be kept in mind that whenever you are writing something, maybe inside your organization, or most of the times when you are communicating or transacting or whatever you're doing with someone from outside the organization, what you are doing, you are actually projecting your company's image. You as a person, you are a representation of your company. So ultimately, if something goes wrong, people won't blame you, people will blame your organization, right? So your company's interest and reputation should take precedence over your personal views and communication styles, right? Whatever your personal views are, whatever your communication style is, we should always keep in mind that we are actually projecting our company's image here, and we should act accordingly, right? Going forward, the next thing is controlling your tone and style. Now, controlling your tone and style is also very important, right? Your communication style involves the choice that you make to express yourself, right? What words you use, in what manner you are saying them, in what tone are you using actually. These type of things. This is your communication style, right? So it is also very important, and it does have an impact, right? A few things important to consider. The first thing is understand the difference between texting and writing. Now, texting is very efficient way of communicating. There is no doubt about it, which is mostly done on mobile devices, which have small screens, small keyboards, right? So what we do in text, that we most of the times we are very much casual. We are trying to make our writing as short as possible. We use different acronyms. We also use different slangs. But while you are writing, these type of things should be avoided, right? And now this is a very this is a very common problem nowadays, that we have been so much used to texting and simplifying words for us. For example, when I want to say be right back, I write BRB, right? Words like LOL, right? For example, if you want to write BE, but in texting we just write the alphabet B. So things like that, they should be avoided. Proper sentence structure, proper grammar, all these things must be considered, right? These type of habits must not be. There are some bad habits like sentence fragments and bad punctuation and lots of acronyms. These type of things, these are bad habits that we developed through time while texting. Whenever we are writing, we should make sure that these type of things are not used. Avoid stale and pompous language. Most of the companies, they just do not appreciate words like attached, please find, right? Please be advised that. Now these are the type of phrases that are typically being used since a very long time. But they are no good at this point of time, right? They have become cliches. What is a cliche? Cliche are actually expressions which have lost their meaning, right? They apparently people keep using them so much that ultimately they just lose their meaning and they just become formalities, right? So these type of things should be avoided. Avoid preaching and bragging. Whenever you are writing, bragging should be avoided, right? Be careful with intimacy. How close you can be to a certain someone in a business environment. It should be closely considered, right? There are different type of people, there are different types of organization, there are different cultures, there are different ways how people behave, right? Another important thing is be careful with humor. Now humor is a great way to break the ice, to make an impression with someone. Humor is a great way to attract people towards you, but it should be used with humor, it should be used with care, because the sense of humor, it is different from person to person, from culture to culture. Something very humorous can be something extremely offensive for someone. So humor must be used smartly. Now, setting the overall tone of whatever you are writing. An example, a table is in front of you. There can be three types of tones, which we say. The first one is stuffy. It is too formal for today's audience. Then we have conversational. A conversational tone is actually it is the middle ground, and it is the mostly preferred tone for business communication. And then we have the unprofessional, that is too casual for business communication. I will not read the whole passages here, but with a few lines. The first one, which is too formal and it is too stuffy, using a lot of maybe complicated and formal words. Dear Miss XYZ, enclosed, please find the information that was requested during our telephone communication of May 14. As was mentioned at that time, Midwell Hospital has significantly more doctors of exceptional quality than any of other health facility at the state, and it goes on, right? Now this is something very formal, too much wordy. On the other hand, conversational tone, this is the type of type of message writing where it should sound like a conversation, right? It should not be very stiff and rigid. Here in this case, it says, here's the information you requested during the phone conversation on Friday. As I mentioned, Midville has the highest rated doctors and more of them than any other hospitals in the state. So this is something a little on the mellow side. It is not too informal, not too casual, but not very much formal, right? So this might be the right way to do it, but again, it depends on organization to organization. In some organization, in some places, it may be necessary, important for us to be very much formal. The last is, it is too casual, unprofessional. Here's the 411 you requested, IMHO. We have more and better doctors than any other of the hospital in the state. Now this is something, if you read it, something too casual, too informal, and things like that must be avoided whenever in business writing. The second thing is, we should always use plain language, simple language, right? Simple is actually the better. Often what we try to do is that we use words which are too complicated. We try to sound over smart, and ultimately we just end up worse, right? There are phrases that are being used and they were used in the past, like we are in receipt of. Now instead of that, very simple, we should write we received. It is better, it is short, and it is well understood, right? Kindly advise. A better or a simpler thing would be to let them, please let us know, right? Attached, please find. Enclosed is, or I have enclosed, things like that. On one hand, the undersigned, or we can say I or we, right? Again, you can go through the table. These are the things that we unnecessarily use, unnecessary words that are being used, which have much better and simpler alternatives, right? So you should always keep this rule in mind while you are writing. The simpler, the better, right? There is no need. Your writing would be good, your writing would be considered better if it is able to fulfill its purpose. And what is the purpose of your writing? That is to properly convey, properly communicate whatever you are actually trying to communicate. The receiver must understand what you are saying, right? You may use very heavy words, but it will all be useless if the receiver does not understand what you are saying, or maybe have a hard time in understanding what you are saying, right? So always use plain language. Another thing, we can either write in active voice or passive voice. Active voice, an example would be that Umar broke the mobile phone, right? This is active voice, but in passive voice it would be something like the mobile phone was broken by Umar, right? So active voice, passive voice, these are the two ways in which we can write. Direct or indirect, we can also mention it here, although technically direct and indirect are a bit different things than active and passive. But in this case, passive voice is the indirect voice, and it is something which is a bit dull, right? The new procedure was developed by the operations team. Now this is passive voice. Against it, the active voice or the direct communication, the operation team developed the new procedure. Now this is something that sounds a bit lively. When you use the passive words, it sounds like it's something, maybe something happened in the past, and something that has happened a long time ago, maybe, right? So passive voice sounds a little dull. So it is better, it is appreciated, it is preferred to use the active voice, right? You can go through these sentences just to spot the difference between active and passive voice. But again, it differs from situation to situation. Maybe at times when you're trying to be more diplomatic, right? Maybe at times which you are trying not to give a very direct answer. So in that cases, sometimes the passive voice is the better thing to do. For example, you lost the shipment. Now this is an active sentence, right? active voice, but it comes really strong. It looks like it is very much powerful. It is very much strong. It is highly criticizing. You lost the shipment, right? For that purpose, if we switch it to passive voice, that is, the shipment was lost, it sounds less critical. It sounds less harsh, right? So active and passive voice, we can play with these things, right? Then we have another thing, choosing your words. Whenever you are writing, words, they do play a very important role. They actually set the overall tone of your whatever you're writing, right? What is a powerful word or phrase? Powerful word or phrase is something that is correct and something that is effective, right? Something that is correct and something that is effective. These type of words should be used. Vague things, unclear things, they should be avoided to use. Use familiar words that are usually people familiar with, using some very different or out of the box word. It may not be a very good idea because it won't serve the purpose if everyone is not able to understand it. Avoid cliches and buzzwords. Again, cliches we have already discussed. These are words or phrases which have been used so much in the past that with time they actually lose their meaning. Buzzwords are actually slang words. They just come and go. There are different type of words that get famous, but they should not be used because everyone may not be aware of it, right? Yes, these type of words are they can be used in informal communication. Nowadays, a very famous buzzword on the social media is "ye to hoga," but we cannot use this in our formal communication, right? Because everyone may not be able to understand it. So, cliches and buzzwords, they should be avoided. On the next page, you can see. All right, this is the end of the slideshow, but just to give you a few examples, we were talking about strong words and weak words, right? Potentially weak word can be increase. Now, the stronger alternatives would be accelerate, amplify, escalate, expand, or things like that, right? A weaker word would be good. Now, a stronger word for that would be admirable, beneficial, desirable, flawless, pleasant, right? Things like that. Unfamiliar words and familiar words. Now, there is a word ascertain, right? Now, it may be unfamiliar to many. Now, instead of that, we can use a familiar word that means find out. Now, find out is very simple. Everyone knows about it, but ascertain is something which people may not be knowing about. Cliches and buzzwords. An uphill battle. An uphill battle. Right? This is an example. It is a cliche. An uphill battle. We can write it very simply as a challenge. It means a challenge. So instead of writing an uphill battle, people may extract different types of meanings from it. We can just simply write a challenge. Call the shots. Another cliche, another phrase. Instead of that, we can write lead. Right? So there are many other examples. I will be providing you a list of them if anyone wants it. So these type of words should be avoided and used. Now, before ending the lecture, I should make one comment. Whatever we have discussed today, this is not science, right? Strictly, this is not strict science. In this case, in communication, things change very quickly. Things are different from person to person, people to people, situation to situation, mood to mood, right? So, for example, if in this chapter we discussed that in usual cases active voice is preferred, yes, in usual cases it is preferred, but there are certain situations in which it may not be preferred. So it is up to you to judge the situation. It is up to you to see what is happening. It is up to you to understand the context, right? Context is very important. So when you understand the context, then you would be able to choose the correct strategy for writing. That was it for today. If you have any questions, we will discuss in our live session.